It's a bird, it's a plane, it's another 100 buffs for Archer mains. Hey guys, MrPokke here. So the time is finally here to showcase Rin as well as later Gilgamesh for their HSR converter kits because their banners are officially out and added as of today. After trying out Rin Tohsaka for myself, I am pretty confident in saying if you are gonna be an Archer main, like for example my free-to-play account with an E1 Archer, this is the closest thing to a must pull because Rin's kit is almost perfectly synergistic as an actual good sub DPS. We'll be going over her kits, builds, Litecoins, Eidolon team comps, and without further ado, let's get into today's content. Now do take note for this Rin's early access as well as later Gilgamesh, do not take the background footage as representation of like for example a full E0 performance on the live server, because while I did make a Rin and Archer at fully E0 S1, I was doing a 48 cost Himiko Nova test previously, so my Sparkle and DHP are going to be E6. So this video is purely going over her mechanics, how to play, how to build her as well as her general pool value. So in summary, Rin to Archer is basically how Saridra is to Phynon and Dahlia is to Firefly. Her kit almost entirely fixes Archer, especially at E0 Archer's previous issues with the damage downtime with just running Sparkle, ensuring a almost 100% uptime on Archer's 5 skill burst damage. If you are going to be playing Rin as a main DPS, this is also viable, but a key breakpoint is going to be notably her E6 as well as E1 to drastically improve her performance. For Rin's core mechanic Gem Energy, it is really simple to use, essentially acting as more buffs, sub DPS and skill point generation for Archer. So generally speaking for Rin Tohsaka, it is very auto-friendly for newer players, especially for those having issues managing Archer's skill point with Sparkle previously. So in summary, if you are going to be an Archer main, E0 Rin is one of the best one cost investments you can go for as of this current moment. Now moving on to Rin's converter kit in casual terms, and once again this is one of the most easiest to use unit. You want to launch a joint follow-up attack followed by an ultimate, and you will use your enhanced skill as a finisher or an AoE attack. So for the base attack, you are not going to be caring about this too much. You will be using this for skill point generation, and most of the times you will not immediately use your enhanced skill at 15 gems because you want to save it for a big burst, kind of like a Cypher ultimate, especially for AoE content. Now jumping to a skill as well as enhanced skill, for the normal skill it is pretty much never going to be used. You will only use basic for skill point generation. Then for her enhanced skill, it is pretty dependent on the situation. So this enhanced skill acts as a bounce with every 3 gem equals to 1 bounce. You can stack your gem energy all the way up to 99 for the highest possible damage, which is going to be 33 different bounces, which will make for some very satisfying damage per screenshot, especially at E6. I will be talking more about the gem energy in the talent portion later on, but generally I would only use this enhanced skill against AoE targets like Flame Reaver clones, Negador Spears to add more free damage that Archer will have an issue dealing with due to his pure single target targeting. You can make use of this enhanced skill a little bit more liberally, especially in pure fiction, if you want to clear a wave. Now keep in mind, this gem energy enhanced skill, it will always end at 2 skill points, generating more gem energy for next enhanced skill per skill point used. So if you are going to be using this enhanced skill at 5 skill points, you are going to be using 3 skill points for 6 more gem energy. Now as a sub DPS for Rin Tohsaka, this is actually not that significant in terms of damage, especially at E0 from a pure damage standpoint, because the gem energy generation is not fast enough for a high gem energy stack. So majority of the damage is still going to be coming from Archer, especially because all of the buffs from Sparkle's main skill is still going to be focusing on Archer himself. Then move on to Rin Tohsaka's ultimate. It is very straightforward, 600% main with 200% target to others. Damage split is a little bit similar to Erudition with a full AoE as well as 1 single target. It does apply a 3 turn 20% vulnerability and 1 skill point regeneration to improve your overall damage. Now you should try and apply this debuff to the targets first before Archer's burst damage, especially against boss content. Other than that, it is very straightforward. Then moving on to Rin Tohsaka's talent, I want to first talk a little bit about gem energy, which can be obtained in the following 4 ways. Talent plus technique will give you 30 when you enter the combat. Ultimate gives you 12, or it's going to be 36 at E6. Talent will also allow you 1 gem energy for 1 skill point recovery or 1 skill point expenditure. Now, your enhanced skill will have every 1 skill point spent, giving you back 2 gem energy. So regarding the talent specifically, pretty much you will have a 100% uptime on the 70% crit damage buff, which benefits not just Archer but also Sparkle's crit damage, scaling her skill Dream Diver as well. You will enter the combat with 20 gem energy, but you might not use this immediately as I've previously mentioned, depending on the scenario. So besides the damage, the second talent is going to be a 4 skill point recovery during Archer's burst, as long as it's going to be lower than 3 skill points. So this will help to quicken Archer's next rotation, even with Sparkle's ultimate down, which was one of the biggest pain points when using Archer, especially at E0. Now keep in mind, this reset happens at the start of Rin's turn, and usually you will be getting 1 Rin action per Archer action for the duration of our fights. If however the fight drags on by too much, you can consider running Rin Tohsaka with speed boots and keep up with Sparkle's speed, so you will never ever run off joint attacks on Archer. Although currently Sparkle's ultimate can also cover the shortfall every 3 turns in skill point generation. Regarding the attack itself, it is going to be a full AoE evolution targeting, so it works well against mobs, and what's nice is that the joint attack is going to be considered a follow-up attack, which means the 2-piece converging stars as well as Asriel's signature light cone can actually work with Rin Tohsaka, buffing Archer and Sparkle's crit damage slightly. Then for the technique, you will just use this to enter the combat with 30 gem energy. That is pretty much it. Then lastly, for Rin Tohsaka's major tracers, besides the skill point limit for Archer to be used freely, she also gives a absolutely massive 150% tag buff for both herself as well as Archer, on top of the 15% rest pen. So this means that attack percentage rope as well as spheres for both units will be heavily diluted from this 150% attack buff, and as such, running them with ER rope and damage percent sphere will round out the damage a little bit more. Now note that the energy regeneration rope is still gonna be lower damage than an attack rope because it is just purely energy, but from my personal experience running Archer, the additional energy, especially on Archer himself, felt a lot smoother for the combat experience. For the second major trait, the 20% speed buff, which is not very important because your Archer speed is pretty much tied to your Sparkle speed. So usually Rin will always be acting after Archer when Sparkle buffs up Archer himself. It does help with hitting the 134 speed on the tag boots just to generate a little bit more energy and skill points for the next wave. And the very last 10 is going to be 12 gem energy when you use ultimate, so that is pretty much it. For the minor tracers, 8% quantum damage, 18% attack as well as 37% crit damage, which is all very nice. Then for the skill leveling priority, ultimate and talent followed by skill followed by basic. For the ultimate talent, it's going to be mainly for the vulnerability as well as the crit damage buff to deal more damage, whereas her personal damage is not the priority unless you want to play a main DPS Rin Tohsaka. Now moving on to the light cone, I did this very in-depth chart for you guys to reference right here, comparing Archer's damage with both his own signature weapon and Asriel's signature weapon, as well as Rin Tohsaka running Rin Tohsaka's S1, followed by Herta's S1, as well as Herta's Store S5. So all this you can just see right here for a comparison. Generally speaking, first of all, for Rin Tohsaka's light cone itself, it is a number 1, very cute light cone art. Now second of all, this is not really tied to Rin Tohsaka's S1, but I felt it was really significant to illustrate right here, which is Asriel's signature weapon was able to give us a 12.5% more final damage for Archer's full 5 skill burst due to Rin's attack percent saturation, which lowers Archer's own S1 value. Keep in mind, Rin's joint attack can also allow Archer to stack on Asriel's signature light cone to pretty much have 100% buff coverage for Asriel's S1. Because keep in mind, for this S1, you do need 4 follow-up attack procs, which is usually 3 follow-up attack from Archer and 1 joint follow-up attack from Rin's joint attack. So TLDR, the 20% damage taken from Asriel's S1 is really significant over here. So if you have a spare Asriel light cone lying around, you can consider giving this to Archer. Now for a side note, Archer's S1 also has a slight ramp up time to hit the 4 stacks of attack percentage buff, whereas Asriel's S1 will hit the maximum a lot faster. Other than Archer's light cone, for Rin Tohsaka's S1, this light cone has a 20% defense now for all allies that is almost exclusively bound to Archer. So you might see some niche cases with Jade as a sub DPS to QQ or Archer, but that is really niche. Besides Rin Tohsaka's S1, Herta's S1 is going to be the closest replacement due to Rin's ultimate being 160 60 energy, and thus you can proc the 1 skill point recovery. However, the damage drop of Archer is gonna be around 15%. So from a pure damage perspective, S1 is still the highest, but D Herda makes her personal damage a lot more comparable. Otherwise, Herda Store S1 is gonna be the go-to because it has zero impact on Archer's damage output, although it will still lower your skill point generation compared to a D Herda S1. So I would say at this point, the S1 does generate a lot of value, so if possible, I would get an E0 S1 Rin Tohsaka. Now moving on to the Relics, the 4-piece Quantum is still going to be the best in slot due to the defense down stacking, especially with S1 and if you have a E2 Sparkle. 4-piece Skull is not bad if you're going to be using E0 Azure Sparkle and E0 Azure Rin, where defense down stacking is not going to be as significant. So at the end of the day, use which one has the highest crit stats if you're not going to be stacking defense down. Then for the 2-piece, you honestly have 3 different options, which is going to be Tengoku Livestream, City of Converging Stars, as well as Routine Arena. Out of all 3 options, Converging Stars, which is going to be the Asheville 2-piece, has the best benefit for Archer directly due to the 12% crit damage buff for both Archer as well as Sparkle herself, while the personal damage perspective is going to be Tengoku 2-piece for a massive personal 48% crit damage buff. Routine Arena is going to be the last option, but it is not a very big difference because E0 Rin's personal damage is once again not super impactful. Now, one thing to consider is that when you're going to be farming for a Tengoku 2-piece, the sub-product is going to be 2-piece and Furious, which is a very decent 2-piece for Mimo slot wanting to upgrade RMC or Sarini, or maybe even Robin SP, because Robin is going to be shown as a Remembrance unit, so just some food for thought. And then for the build itself, it's going to be crit rate or crit damage body, attack boots, damage percentage sphere, energy regeneration or attack rope, and you're going to be focusing on your double crit subsets. So due to the massive 150% attack buff, as well as Sparkle's talent giving us another 45% attack, damage is always going to be the best choice for both Rin as well as Archer. For Rin's personal 20% speed, it also means she does not need any speed subsets and you can just go for the attack boots because she's not going to be a unit that really wants a lot of turns anyways, unless you want to make Rin be as fast as Sparkle or matching up close to Sparkle's speed so that you can always refresh your joint attack. For the crit rate or crit damage means that it will depend on your build. Then lastly, for the rope itself, the attack percentage slot benefit is going to be diminished, while energy regeneration rope can help you charge your ultimate faster, which is going to be impacted by a joint follow-up attack as well, taking place once every single turn. You can adjust this based on content, so for example, if you want pure damage without needing another ultimate, go for attack percentage rope. Otherwise, you can use energy regeneration for longer content, especially like pure fission and anomaly arbitration. Now, something to consider, if you're going to be swapping over Archer to an energy regeneration rope, which is what I'm personally doing, you could just give the old attack percentage rope to Rin Tohsaka herself. Now, moving on to Rin's items, they're going to be pretty decent, leaning more towards Rin's personal damage. For E1, it is very good for personal damage, greatly improving your enhanced skill uptime due to almost double gem energy gain. But that being said, the current setup with Rin Tohsaka is via Sparkle, which is going to be a single target buffer from Sparkle's skill Dream Diver. And all buffs as of this current moment, if you're going to be using her with Archer, should be mainly focused on Archer himself, meaning lower buff coverage for Rin's personal damage. I can see a better use case for this using a hyper carry with Sparkle, Saridra or Sustainless with AoE buffers like E1 Tribi or Robin. In the future, if the Sparkle slot ever gets replaced to be an AoE buffer, maybe in another Fate unit, then you can consider picking out Rin's E1 when a unit is going to be announced for a pure Fate team if it's ever going to be coming out. Then for Rin's E2 is a very simple final damage multiplier of 30% increase while also increasing Rin's personal skill damage, stacking on very nicely with her E1. If this was however E1, I would consider E1 Rin instead, but E2 with a 30% damage multiplier buff only for skill damage, meaning no ultimate or follow-up attack, is a little bit expensive, which will lower the value of this cost. Then for the E4, it's going to be a massive 140% crit damage buff, very nice. Then lastly for E6, this is by far the biggest upgrade for a main DPS Rin Tohsaka, kind of reminding me of E6 Saber. Extra turn and GE generation on top of the E1 and E2 makes Rin Tohsaka a proper main DPS potential absolutely insane, especially if you're going to be using a full 48 cost team, which I'll be showcasing in the future as well. So at this point between E1 or S1, I would personally say S1 is going to be over the E1. The E1 is going to be a good upgrade, but not the best spot right now because Sparkle mainly buffs single target from her skill unless you want to intentionally try and stack on your Sparkle's buffs for both Archer and Rin at the same time, but that could require a little bit of micromanagement. Although this E1 can significantly improve Rin's personal damage, which can help with mobs and waves sometimes. If you do want to play a main DPS Rin, I will highly recommend the E1 first because this is close to, if not more than, a 40% final damage increase from this E1 perspective. Otherwise, it is going to be E0 S0 followed by E0 S1 into E1 S1. Now, jumping into the team comps, honestly, for Rin Tohsaka, it is very straightforward. You either use her with Archer or you use her as a main DPS, which is not really advisable at E0 unless you have higher Eidolons on your supports like Sparkle, Saridra, Robin, or DHPT as the sustain. So for the sustain slot in team composition, DHPT is a clear-cut choice with its attack buffs and shielding, especially if you have DHPT's E1, which gives you rest pen as well as skill point recovery, which is really good for Archer and giving gem energy to Rin Tohsaka. Now the reason why I feel it's better with DHPT is due to its Dragon's ultimate giving a greater ease to trigger Archer's follow-up attack damage compared to Huo. However, Huo can also be used for T1 energy regeneration and attack buff, and her skill point consumption is not as bad compared to pre-Rin Tohsaka, so if you have nowhere else to use a Huo and DHPT is really busy, you can definitely use Huo as a sustain for this team as well. Then for the support slot, with or without Archer as a main DPS, you are definitively using Sparkle, which is the most important support out of any one of these units here. Sparkle's skill point generation is the highest in the game, with a massive AV advance for the main DPS Archer or main DPS Rin, crit damage buff, rest pen, damage taken, damage pen, as well as attack percent. At this point, even if you're thinking of using Sparkle in Mimico or Phynon, Sparkle will still have the highest value with Archer or Rin. Other than that, Saridra is a really good option for a sustainless Archer run or a main DPS Rin run due to skill duplication working with both Archer and Rin. Her +1 skill point for S1 also helps with skill point generation in tandem with Sparkle, while her ultimate can help deal with mob damage to ensure Rin's enhanced skill only focus on the main target itself. Now, another very interesting thing that I'm going to be trying in the future, E6 Rin can give an extra turn, so combining this with E1 Rin and Saridra means you can do 3 burst E skills consecutively for some absolutely ridiculous damage. Another choice for support is going to be Sunday, which could be considered if you do not have a Sparkle at all. But you would need to play Sunday as a hyper speed Sunday while not having nearly as much skill point generation post-buff Sparkle. So I would not advise using him unless you have absolutely no choice. So at this point of this team building video, I just want to answer this question of main DPS or sub DPS Rin Tohsaka. So unlike Mimico with a lot of different team building options, probably one of the most in the entire HSR roster for this current moment, Rin Tohsaka's team building is much more rigid and thus more straightforward to understand. So for a main DPS Archer, I would go for the Archer into Sparkle into DHPT Huo, or Archer Sparkle into Saridra, Babin, Tribi, Well, or Cypher. Option 1 for sustain and option 2 for sustainless. So for the option 1, it's going to be preferred for most players who own Archer and you want to improve for his personal damage even further, especially for longer fights where skill points become an issue. If you have vertical investment of Robin, especially around E2 S1, the performance for E2 S1 Robin is kind of comparable to an E0 Rin, but this is only if you can end a fight within roughly 200 action value or 0 cycle. Otherwise, Robin's ultimate after will become a big problem, which can be seen for pure fission or anomaly arbitration. On the other hand, if you want to play a main DPS Rin Tohsaka, recommended with E1 plus Rin, you can use Sparkle, Saridra, and DHPT Huo, or for a sustainers option, Sparkle, Saridra into Robin, Tribi, Welt, or Cypher. So option 1 for sustain, option 2 sustainless. For players who do not want to use Archer because Rin is going to be their wife or girlfriend, you can consider detaching Rin from Archer and instead giving Rin more cost for a smoother main DPS experience, especially using her E1. So in summary, Sparkle is key that you add a sustain, DHPT is more comfortable to trigger more follow-up attacks for Archer, and the main DPS Archer is going to be advisable for most players, whereas main DPS Rin is going to be for those who want vertical investments for Rin Tohsaka herself. Now lastly, going to your endgame performance, all runs were done in full auto, and again, take this with a massive grain of salt because I pre-activated E6 Sparkle and DHPT for Mimico videos, so you should be waiting for the live server, which as of this time recording, it should be right now. I should be streaming when this video goes up, or rather like a couple of hours later, I think. So we will be trying out Rin Tohsaka on my free-to-play account for a better comparison. So the key points to take note over here is going to be considering we did have E6 Sparkle in tandem with an E0 Archer. I had almost no issue using a 5 skill burst with Archer every single time, and I feel this is going to be the case even with a E0 Sparkle and DHPD on the live server, though E1 Archer will be definitely helping a lot. Now remember to apply your Rin's ultimate first before Archer's burst to apply a 20% vulnerability debuff. On top of that, Rin can help a lot with mob content like Flame Weaver summons, Nigador Spears, and the 5-man banana boss, which is very difficult for Archer to pivot and much more comfortable compared to using an E1 Tribby due to Rin's skill point generation. Sparkle use over here is going to be an E6 which buffs the entire team, though if you were to take a manual control of this team, you can try and buff Rin sometimes with Sparkle's skill because Dream Diver can last 2 turns. So both Rin and Archer can obtain Sparkle's crit damage buff, but it will depend on the situation. Ideally, you should be buffing Rin right before Rin uses the enhanced skill while still maintaining Archer's full burst buffs. So at this point, we're going to be coming to the final thoughts of Rin Tohsaka. Really cool cost value for Archer mains. E0 S1 is going to be recommended for the highest possible Archer damage. Main DPS Rin is going to be fine with E1 plus and a Sparkle plus Saritra combination. As of this moment, Sparkle is going to be one of the most important supports, almost not replaceable without suffering significant damage drop-off due to your skill point uptime. Personally, I feel both Rin and Archer will benefit more from a support that not only gives skill point, but also buffing both of them at the same time instead of just Sparkle's ultimate, because Sparkle's skill can only buff a single unit. At this point, E1 Rin can also be a really good dual DPS with E1 Archer. Lastly, DHP sustain are still really good, but I'm not too sure what a general version 4 or even version 5 sustain is going to be looking like. So with that, I'm coming over to the end of our Rin Tohsaka's quick little early access guide. Let me know what you guys think and thoughts in the comments down below. I will be playing her as of this current moment on the live server on both my free-to-play account and current account. So that's pretty much it. Word of the day is going to be Twin Tails. Join Twitch, join Discord, use code POKE with 10% of gamer subs. All the best for gacha pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.